2016 to remember exactly how dangerous and catastrophic unnamed storms can be. And so we all need to take this very, very seriously. We know that this is going to be a Louisiana event now in all probability, based upon a confluence of various models and what information we're getting out of the National Weather Center. This is going to be a heavy rainfall event across South Louisiana, and I want everyone to be mindful that heavy rains could be experienced anywhere across the state. And the entire coastal area of Louisiana is at play in this storm. And we're talking about as much as 10 to 15 inches of rain over a 24-hour period that will start sometime Friday in all likelihood and go through Saturday. So that is a short time period for such intense rain. Obviously, we're not sure yet of the exact track of the storm or the strength of the potential tropical system once it makes landfall. However, we are confident that there will be widespread heavy rainfall and coastal flooding. We also know that the Gulf of Mexico, because it is so warm, that the longer the storm system lingers over the Gulf, the more organized and the stronger it is likely to become before it makes landfall. At this time, it appears it's going to be a very slow-moving storm, possibly as slow as 3 to 5 miles per hour, which means that there could be significant problems with some rain bands. It will seem in all likelihood that the storm is stationary and it just will keep dumping rains in certain areas. It also means that we could have heavy rain not just over the weekend but into next week. I want to remind everyone that this is day 257 of the Mississippi River flood fight, and that will exacerbate many of the issues that we're going to face in Louisiana, especially if the brunt of the storm hits in the southeast part of the state, as many of the tracking models suggest that it will. Potential storm surge near the mouth of the Mississippi River will be up to 3 to 4 feet on Friday or early Saturday, and the storm surge in the Mississippi River in the New Orleans area we're expecting to be at 3 feet. So the Mississippi River level at New Orleans is expected to reach 20 feet. There could be a considerable amount of overtopping of the Mississippi River levees in Plaquemines Parish on both the east bank and the west bank, and we're targeting areas south of Oakville on the west bank and south of Carnarvon on the east bank as being most likely to be at risk for flooding due to overtopping of the levees. Right now, we believe that any overtopping of the levees would be relatively short duration of about 12 hours, but that is still a very, very significant hazard, and so we're asking everyone to take this very seriously. We're in regular contact with local officials, and just a few minutes ago, I actually had an opportunity to speak with Kurt Lapine, the president of Plaquemines Parish, and I know that they are taking all the necessary precautions in this storm event as well. National Guard will be moving high water vehicles to areas that may need those resources and standing up command posts, getting soldiers in place, as well as other resources. The same is true for other agencies, including the Department of Wildlife and Fisheries, State Police, the State Fire Marshal's Office, the Department of Transportation Development, and the Department of Children and Family Services. CPRA is monitoring 163 floodgates along the Mississippi River. There are 588 gates along coastal Louisiana, and they're doing this in conjunction with levee districts. Closures are anticipated over the next few days, and in fact, some gates are already closed. Areas of concern on the west bank, on the east bank of the river, south of Carnarvon, as I mentioned, and on the west bank, south of Oakville. I would point out that the Bayou Chene floodgate, which is the temporary barge structure, it is still in place. It has caused the water to go down on the protected side of that floodgate, and it helped drainage to significantly improve since it was put in place. It will also help water to flow out of that area, and there are 5 parishes that are impacted by that, and that will be assisted by that floodgate being in place, and that being Assumption, Lower St. Martin, Iberville, St. Mary, and Terrebonne parishes. We're not sure whether the state will be opening any shelters yet, but should we need to do that, we certainly will. We are working with local officials to see what sheltering needs are. And obviously, if there are any evacuations, be they voluntary or mandatory, that will mean that there will certainly be shelters opened, and we'll have more information on that later. If you haven't already prepared yourself and your family for a severe weather event, you need to go ahead and do that. Of course, it's hurricane season now anyway, and we encourage everyone to do that. We ask people to go to getagameplan.org. That's Get a Game Plan, and it has a lot of information that you can use to better prepare yourself and your family for these severe weather events. It's also critical that you pay attention to the weather, that you monitor updates, and that you heed the warnings and the advice of local authorities. Before lunch today, I will be declaring a statewide emergency because we don't know yet where this storm is going to land, but we know it's going to be a big storm, a significant rain and storm surge event. Wind is possible, however, not just with respect to possible tornadic activity, which we've been advised about, but straight line winds could potentially be strong as well. And I will remind everyone that when the ground is already saturated, it doesn't take a lot of wind to knock trees over onto power lines or onto houses, onto businesses, onto roads, and so forth. I also want to advise everyone that one of the risks, one of the hazards, I should say, that produce the most problems are flooded roadways and people driving through standing water. Sometimes that standing water is not still. It has a current to it, and often it is too deep to safely get through. And in the past, we've seen fatalities related to flooding events because individual motorists decide to try to drive through that. We're asking motorists not to do that, to be very, very careful and cautious, and don't attempt to drive through any standing water unless you know absolutely for sure how deep it is and that you can safely get through. You can access real-time information about road closures at 511la.org, and I would encourage people to do this, especially if they're going to be traveling. I want people to also know that FEMA is working with us. They're on the ground. I appreciate John Long being here already. And we may be seeking a federal declaration ahead of landfall if we identify assistance and resources that we need from the federal government that wouldn't be available to us absent such a declaration. And we'll be making a decision about that as the day unfolds. I want to reiterate that no one should take this storm lightly. It doesn't matter, again, that it's not a named storm. This, in all likelihood, is going to be a very significant weather event. It would be in and of itself, but if you look at the fact that we've got the elevated Mississippi River and we've had more rainfall in Louisiana over the last several months than normal, you know that it makes it much harder to deal with events of this type. So, our next briefing will be tomorrow here at about 12:30. That's what we anticipate right now. We will have a unified command group meeting at 11 o'clock tomorrow to get the latest from the National Weather Service. And obviously, we stood up the Webb EOC here and organized for this effort on Monday. We've been communicating with and coordinating with local officials at the various parishes' offices of emergency preparedness since Monday. But our next meeting will be here tomorrow at 11, and we anticipate another press event such as this one taking place sometime around 12:30 tomorrow. So with that, I will take your questions. You see the people who are arrayed behind me. So if you ask a question that is more properly addressed by someone, whether it be Colonel Murphy with the Corps or State Police or whoever, that's who's likely to come forward and answer the questions. Greg Hilburn.
Governor, so is this event in New Orleans ongoing now related to the storm, or is it separate?
Well, no, it's a separate event, and with the possible tornadic activity and the potential flooding that's going on there now is not related or caused by this particular storm. But I don't know that that really matters because it's still a rain event. The good news is this particular event in New Orleans that we're experiencing this morning should abate and before the storm actually comes onto shore. Yes, ma'am.
Jennifer Crockett with WDSU. What can you tell us about plans in Plaquemines Parish with the potential for the overtopping?
Yeah.
What's happening now to protect people's homes and their businesses, and are you considering an evacuation?
Well, the parish president is looking at that. So he's going to be meeting, in fact, he may be meeting right now with the sheriff and other officials down there, and I'm not going to get ahead of him. It'll be his decision as to whether he issues an evacuation, and if so, when, and whether that's voluntary or mandatory. But they are looking at that right now, and of course, it's both the East Bank and the West Bank in Lower Plaquemines Parish. I can tell you that he has available all the resources we have at the state, all that we can bring to bear from the federal government to help with this as well. And so that's a decision that they're currently making, and I'm not going to get ahead of him because that causes oftentimes a lot of misinformation. But as soon as a decision is made, that will be communicated to the people of Plaquemines Parish, whether they are residents or whether they're working in that area. And so I would just ask you to be a little patient, and we'll get that information out to you as soon as we can, as soon as there's information to put out. Yes, ma'am.
Has it been determined where the high water vehicles are going to be placed?
Yeah, well, not precisely, although I can tell you that because of the elevated river levels along the Mississippi, we will be putting, that will be what we would consider our main effort is in southeast Louisiana. However, we have enough soldiers and high water vehicles and other resources that they're going to be adequately pre-positioned all along coastal Louisiana. But with an emphasis in southeast Louisiana so that they can respond, especially in that Plaquemines Parish area that we've been talking about. Yes, sir.
You mentioned the 2016 flood, and there's
Yeah.
a lot of people in this area that are looking at this very concerned. Is there anything that you can say that you have planned in advance to not have a repeat of what happened in 2016?
Well, you always do the very best that you can, and we bring resources to bear as we get those resources and we're able to do it. We've made a lot of announcements about projects that are going to be constructed, and many of those are in progress. But the fact of the matter is, if Mother Nature dumps between 10 and 15 inches of rain over 24 hours, we are going to have flooding. I mean, we saw that, I think it was most recently on June the 6th. When we had several inches of rain in just a couple of hours, and you saw some localized flooding. So we're asking people to be very, very cautious, first and foremost, and to take this seriously. We will know much better in 24 hours, we believe, on what we can expect in terms of the storm intensity. We'll have a better idea of the tracking and so forth. But right now, we're asking everyone in the southern part of Louisiana, especially along the coast, to take this very seriously. But we do know also that once this system makes landfall, it is going to move north. And so it will eventually visit rainfall, heavy rainfall in central and north Louisiana as well. Any other questions? Okay, so we will be issuing more information as soon as it becomes available. We anticipate, again, that we will be seeing you back here tomorrow at about 12:30. Thank you so much.
And there you heard it from the governor. He is declaring a statewide emergency before lunch, given the fact that there are multiple areas that could be affected by this storm.
Yeah, calling this a storm for Louisiana, and the exact path is still, of course, yet to be determined by whatever the storm becomes. But what you're seeing right here is just above us. That is New Orleans. And the governor's saying, rightfully so, this is not that storm, but it is connected to it. Talking with our folks here, these are rain bands that are just spitting off of this storm right now. So this is kind of connected to to it. And this is already part of what we're seeing, what you're seeing right there, the radar. That's what New Orleans is dealing with.
To update us on those conditions the governor was just talking about, because they've changed a bit, let's get over to Diane Deaton. Diane?
Thanks very much, Lauren. And again, loosely connected with this system. It's going to start to consolidate over the course of the next few days. Right now on Max 2, Steve just put up this information for you. We were talking about the fact of that very heavy rainfall in Jefferson and Orleans Parish. Now these are flash flood emergencies from the National Weather Service, and that is a highest possible alert level. This is a very serious situation. Very heavy rainfall. You saw the water spouts a little while ago around Orleans Parish. So right now, this part of our world, again, this is loosely connected to that system that, as we were saying, is going to consolidate over the course of the next few days. But this you're seeing flash flood emergencies. And so most of our viewing area now under a flash flood watch. I'll show that to you here in just a second. So let's go ahead and go on to Max 1. With Max 1, this is going to show you the latest on that invest. Nothing has really changed from last night, from 1 o'clock this morning, 7 o'clock. The numbers are still the same. We're still looking at that 90% probability for tropical development. Here is that low. Now the northeastern Gulf of Mexico has moved a little bit more to the south, a little bit more to the west than it was earlier this morning. It was just right south to just about the bend there, right around Tallahassee. This is what we're looking at for the models, the European models and the American model. There's still some difference. Our European model is saying that it's going to come in a little bit stronger to the west of us. The American model saying a little bit weaker, possibly right over our area. So let me go ahead and show those two models to you now. This is the European model. We're fast forwarding 24 hours to tomorrow. Incidentally, Air Force reconnaissance will go out this afternoon and we'll check the Invest 92L, get back to the National Hurricane Center in Miami, and we'll have a little better understanding. Steve will have more information on that at noon, and Jay will have more information tonight at 6 on what's expected. Right now, the European model at 9 o'clock, this is what we're looking at. To the south of us, getting its act together to the south of us. We fast forward another 24 hours. This is Friday at 9 o'clock. Here you can see a well-defined storm. This is at that time a tropical storm. Now this again was new this morning, that it looks like it's going to continue to move just a little bit more to the west. If you remember yesterday, it was pretty much on top of southeast Louisiana. Now again, this is the European model saying this is a substantial storm. This is Saturday morning at about 9 o'clock in the morning. Then Saturday afternoon, this is either going to be a very strong tropical storm or maybe even a Category 1 hurricane. This again is what the European model is saying. So we have still some differences with our models, but this is, no matter how you look at, this is going to be a significant and a very strong storm, and it depends on where it makes landfall and when, as far as those high rainfall totals, because as you heard the governor say, this is going to be a major rain event. So if it goes in southwest Louisiana, eastern Texas, like the European model is suggesting, the heaviest of the rainfall is going to be to the west of us. When you see all that white, that's at least 10 inches or higher. It's going to be much more than that to the west of us. So that is the European model. Now, show you the American model. This again, fast forwarding to tomorrow morning. You can see a lot of that, not as well organized to the south of us. Still in the basic position that the European model is, but not nearly as organized, not nearly as strong. Then you see Friday morning, you can still see it kind of looking like it's not terribly organized. And this is saying, at least the American model is saying, you're not seeing all the lines converging as tight to indicate a strong system. So this is Saturday morning at 9 o'clock. Still, it's going to be in the Gulf of Mexico, but this is saying that by Saturday and Sunday morning that we'll have the system move into southeast Louisiana, but not as strong as what the European model is saying, back to the west across southwest Louisiana. So we still have challenges. We still have things that are not it's not tied together neatly in a bow yet. We're not sure. But if this is the scenario, if it comes across southeast Louisiana as a weaker storm, then that heaviest of that rainfall now is going to be to the east of us. And there you see what we're looking at, 10, 15 inches of rain possible to the east of us. Still a lot to be determined, still a lot to be settled. And I just wanted to show you right now, Doppler radar, that heaviest rain, again, that flash flood emergency for Jefferson and for Orleans Parish. Not so much rain in our immediate area yet, but again, there is a flash flood watch that is in effect for our area until at least tomorrow evening. Flash flood warning and that flash flood emergency in effect right now for Orleans. And for Jefferson Parish, guys.
Okay, Diane, thank you very much. You can keep up with the latest developments right there in the 9 News app as we take another look at New Orleans there at the bottom of your screen. We're updating conditions across the state, and that is your best resource.
Yeah, the 9 News weather app is going to have all that technology, all that information that Diane just kind of took you through. And then if you open up the 9 News app as well, all the information that we have coming into us is going to be filtered right there between newscasts up to the minute, including things like, well, this right here, the sandbag locations, which are getting added to and constantly updated. If you click on that story, it'll scroll you through places like Baker and Baton Rouge and Denham Springs and West Baton Rouge. Those locations just coming in. But this is obviously just the beginning. This is a situation that we know how to deal with down here. It's just a matter of getting to it.
Yeah, you don't want to wait. You
No.
want to prepare now, and we will be here through it all with you. We'll join you back here for 9 News at noon with any new information that becomes available to us. But in the meantime, we'll get back to regular programming.